we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Payson Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, 8 EST, March 18th, 2024, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Cinemasters Reviews. Took the week off last week, was kind of in a post-Oscars mood, was just a little tired, a little under the weather, but I'm excited to be back this week and be reviewing two exciting movies. We are going to be reviewing Arthur the King, the new Mark Wahlberg movie, as well as Love Lies Bleeding, the new movie from Saint Maud director Rose Glass. Exciting show. I see we jump right into it with our first review of the night, Arthur the King. This is the newest movie directed by Simon Kellen Jones. It follows a competitive, I'm not entirely sure what the sport is called, a competitive survival racer by the name of Michael. He leads a team, and about 3 years ago, he was, even though he's had years and years of experience, him and his team had a really bad experience in the Dominican Republic and ended up going viral, especially with a photo that one of the team members took. And he hasn't really done an expedition since and hasn't really done a race. And Michael's just kind of getting the itch back to go out there, do this full-on race, get back into the wilderness. And he needs to assemble a team, he needs to get sponsors. And is he going to be able to do it? Well, it's based off a true story. So if you know what happens in the true story, you can technically know what happens here. I didn't know what happens, what happened with that story, so that's not like a knock against this movie. Just want to say it is. In terms of sports movies like this that are based off true stories, this is a very typical one. This definitely follows a formula. We open on this character. He's a bit down on his luck. He's not doing poorly. He has a wife, he has a daughter. But you can definitely tell that there's something in Michael's brain that's just making him say I want to get it back out there. I want to get back into the wilderness. I want to start racing again. And he just needs that itch, and he needs that, and he needs people to support him and back him, because in order to do this sort of sport, you need sponsors, you need money, and you need a team, and you need to assemble a team, whether it's a navigator and whether it's people that are able to traverse this essentially dangerous locale of the Dominican Republic. Definitely goes through all those elements. The reason why this movie is called Arthur the King is because during the Michael's team's race, he comes across a dog that he ends up feeding some of his meatballs to, and the dog just kind of takes a liking to the team. Michael takes a liking to the dog. The dog's name is Arthur, and he's like, you know what? You're going to become a member of my team. So it just kind of adds a dog just for reasons, and like I said, it was based off a true story, so I can't really blame it for that. I'm not complaining that there was a dog in a movie. I kind of had this observation while watching this movie of you can take the most generic and run-of-the-mill story, which admittedly this movie is a little bit run-of-the-mill, but if you add a dog and make it likable and just put that dog in certain perilous situations, but not super perilous, you always know the dog's going to be okay, you're going to be just a little bit more invested, because it's a dog. Who doesn't like dogs? If you don't like dogs, you're kind of a monster. But I digress. Mark Wahlberg, he's not doing anything remarkable as this character, but he's definitely getting the job done. I think Mark Wahlberg, as he's progressed to this, I guess you could say second half of his career, I think he's just become a little bit more of an everyman and more of your all-American, your all-American male. He's someone you can believe, you can realistically see doing these types of sports, going out and doing these types of trekking adventures. And there's nothing that you as the audience need to suspend your belief to say oh, I couldn't see someone like Wahlberg doing this. This is definitely in his sort of niche, and I do think he does it well. Just nothing that's gonna blow your socks off. In regards to the rest of the cast, Simu Liu who most people probably know as the title character in Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings. He's also the other Ken that that Ryan Gosling's Ken in Barbie is rivals with. He kind of he plays the he's the only he plays the only character who was a team member of Michael's original crew and sort of got into a fight with him because he felt like he should have more of a voice in the team. In the 3 years that he hasn't been competing, he's kind of become like this, like influencer, survivalist in a way. Like he's the one posting a bunch of things on Instagram. He has his own like survival kit line. And Michael just realized, hey, if we're gonna be going out there, I don't like you, but I need the money in order to get this team off the ground. So I'm gonna need your support in a way. Simu Liu is really entertaining in this movie. Like I think he's someone that's been able to nail like the whole like brash but like still likable douchebag character that certain actors are able to play, and he does that really, really well here. The character of Liam does kind of seem at points like just sort of like a manufactured rivalry for Michael, but like movies need conflicts like this, and like with a movie as like that feels as textbook as this, you understand why a character like that is in there, and there really aren't any complaints. And yeah, Simu Liu is very, very good. Another member of the team, Natalie Emmanuel. Most people probably know her from Game of Thrones. She played Miss Sandy. She's in the Fast and Furious movies. She plays the other major survivalist in this movie, and she's good in the movie. I will say there's something frustrating with her character that happens right before the first major race, where she just reveals that, like, right before the bells are about to start, she huddles up and says, "Hey guys, my dad has cancer." And like, you as an audience member are like, "Whoa, this just kind of came out of nowhere." Like, there's really like, and as the movie goes on, I hate to say there's really no reason for that to really be an element of the movie, except for maybe to like put a little bit more of emotional stakes into her character. But as an audience member, you just kind of watch that and you're like, that feels forced and that feels manufactured. That didn't really have to be there. I will say it is fun seeing all these characters and all these teams racing through the Dominican Republic and seeing all their different like strategies of saying like, okay, we're gonna have to we're gonna try to cut the corners by going off the path here. We're gonna try to climb a mountain up here. We're gonna try to parasail down the river here. And honestly, if I have one major complaint about this movie, I think we get to the race a little bit too fast. Like, this is an hour and 45-minute movie. I wish we could have spent maybe a good like 45 minutes of the movie like planning the race and like having the characters like plan their trek of saying like, okay, this is how we're gonna traverse, this is how we're gonna get done with the race the fastest as we could. Because in my opinion, like if when you think about a show like The Amazing Race, I think one of the most fun elements is having the characters like plan and say like, okay, how are we gonna do this the fastest way? And a part of me wishes, and I think the best example I can think of this is like, one of the most fun aspects of when you're watching a heist movie is watching how the team assembles the heist and plans the heist. And I wish we would have had more scenes where the team is like planning the race and planning the mission as they go on. The direction by Simon Kellen Jones is pretty good. Like, he directs the shots and the scenery of the Dominican Republic well. The movie looks very pretty. With the movie being an hour 45-minute runtime, there are a lot of points where like the characters are on a time limit, they're on a race. I think it's very effective that you always get to see where Michael's team is placing in the race and how many spots they have to go until they hit first place, or whether or not they do hit first place. I'm not going to spoil the movie. I think there's one really, really good sequence where the characters come across a zip line and they're like, hey, if we take this zip line, we'll be able to skip like 4 hours on these teams. And I won't spoil what happens on the zip line, but it is very, very thrilling and probably the most intense sequence. Even though, like, I think as you're watching this movie, it's a PG sports movie, so I think you kind of know like, okay, nothing probably too bad is going to happen to these characters, but that is the one character where you're like, oh wow, these characters are in pretty major peril. How are they going to be able to get out of it? It requires a little bit of suspension of disbelief with what they do. I think it's just like how like strong these characters are without spoiling anything, but it is still a very, very fun sequence. And yeah, that is about it with everything. Like these types of movies come around. We usually get a couple of them a year, and like they're not like bad or anything, but they definitely don't like move the needle in any way. But if these are the types of movies you like, then I'm sure this movie will get the job done. If I were to rate Arthur the King on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm going to give it a decent rating of a 6.5 out of 10. Once again, this is not a movie that I'm going to be remembering for very long, but it's not a movie that I had really any like major bad experiences with. I think it is a cool story with what happens with how Michael befriends this dog and what happens in the end with the dog. I think that is very fun, but yeah, there's nothing in this movie that's really gonna like have me remembering this like, oh wow, that like Arthur the King, that was a movie right there. If you have time to see it, maybe go check it out in a matinee. But honestly, you don't really need to waste your time seeing this in theaters. But when this does come to streaming or when this does come to Blu-ray, I think this would be a nice watch to watch when it does come home. We're going to be moving on to our second review of the night, that being Love Lies Bleeding. This is the newest movie directed by Rose Glass, distributed by A24. This follows a gym manager by the name of Lou, played by Kristen Stewart. We open on her. This movie takes place in the 80s, and she's a little like kind of down on her luck. She's sort of like emotionally lost in a way, and she befriends a new bodybuilder by the name of Jackie, played by real-life bodybuilder Katie O'Brien. And their friendship, Jackie essentially befriends Lou in order to get a free membership, and wouldn't you know it, their friendship eventually develops into a romance. That romance eventually develops into partners in crime because, wouldn't you know it, Lou's brother-in-law is kind of a piece of shit and is not a good husband to Lou's sister, and they eventually some misunderstandings happen. That character ends up dying. They have to dispose of the body, and throughout the rest of the movie, they're kind of in hiding / on the run to try to stay out of trouble from Ed Harris, who plays Lou's father, who is essentially like a secret yet not so secret criminal that sort of runs the western town that they're in. Like, he's the one that runs everything. Every like piece of crime goes through him, and even though he wasn't a fan of his son-in-law, he definitely sees his loss, the loss of him, as an issue. One of the major things I do love about this movie is a straight up neo-noir, and I am all here for it. I'm going to look up real quick to see where this movie takes place. I know they talk about Las Vegas a lot because Katie O'Brien is essentially training to go and compete in a bodybuilding contest in Las Vegas, but I'm not sure if it takes place in Nevada. It takes place somewhere in like Arizona, Texas. Yeah, some western town, but Jackie's trying to train to eventually to eventually go and compete in a bodybuilding contest. But all of these scenes, it's very like low lit sunsets. It's very like murky. There are a lot of scenes where you're in Lou's apartment and you have specifically Jackie just shooting up on steroids, and it really like the way how the movie's edited, it like zooms in on her veins, and like all the crime scenes, like it just looks really, really cool. And like whenever a movie can capture that neo-noir feel, I'm really excited because I like stylistic crime movies like this. And yeah, like this movie is not like a super realistic crime movie. It's very much going for that like style and a little bit of the over-the-top energy, but I am a big fan of movies like this. Kristen Stewart is unbelievably good as the character of Lou. I think throughout, since her post-Twilight career, I think she's proven herself that she is a great actress, especially when she is in non-blockbusters and when she's in smaller indie movies. And I think the way how this movie starts out with the character of Lou, she's very, very reserved. And then as the movie goes on, she begins to get her confidence again. She's someone who loves her sister. She wants to love Jackie, but Jackie is so unstable. And just seeing how many like dynamics Stewart gives to this character. She's not she's not like the most high energy performer, but she knows what to give to this character, and I think that works really, really well. The romance between between Lou and Jackie, I think is excellent. Once again, Katie O'Brien was an actress before this. She was a pro bodybuilder, but she does a great job. She's flipping jacked. Like when you first see this character, you're like, holy crud, that is a strong woman. And I think it's awesome that the Rose Glass decided to cast her like that. And I think she's excellent. I will say, be warned, if this does bother you, there are some fairly explicit sex scenes in this movie between Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. So if that's not your cup of tea, you're probably not going to like it. To me, this reminded me of The Wachowskis' Bound, which I think is another excellent crime movie with a lesbian love story in the middle of it. And yeah, the whole romance between their characters really, really works, especially with how tumultuous it is, with how unstable the character of Jackie is, how Lou wants to love her, but she can't because Jackie is so impulsive and so on edge throughout the movie, and just seeing how that ends up, I think works really, really well. Ed Harris is having the time of his life in this role as the villain of Lou, as Lou's dad. When you're first introduced to him, he has the funniest wig in the world, where he's completely bald, but he has long brown hair, and like you rarely ever see Ed Harris play characters like that. But I kind of love it. Like Lou, he's kind of reserved throughout the majority of the movie, but like especially in the last act, where like things aren't going his way, and like you can see that he's starting to lose control of the situation. It's so much fun getting like an unhinged Ed Harris like this, and with a neo-noir film like this, I think it's always fun when you do have like a when you have a memorable villain, and Ed Harris really, really brings that. Dave Franco's also good at playing his douchebag, his douchey son-in-law, and I think that's really, really fun. It's honestly a role you could totally see James Franco playing maybe like 5 years ago, and it's fun to see Dave Franco playing that type of character now. So he's really good. What I will say, of the movie's great cast, this movie has Jenna Malone in it, and Jenna Malone I think is a great, great actress that I just don't think Hollywood has really like given her chance. Like Jenna Malone, she obviously played Joanna in all the Hunger Games movies, and she completely stole all those movies. And I kind of just wish like Hollywood would give her more meaty roles, because she plays a very like demure and like reserved housewife woman, and throughout the majority of the movie she's kind of just on a hospital bed because of the horrible things that Dave Franco did to her character. And I think with this movie I was just like, man, I wish she would have just had a little bit more meaty of a role to chew on. If there was one other like I guess kind of complaint I had with this movie, there are a lot of shots where we see Jackie like shooting up and bulking up, and we see like the zoom in on her veins, and as they really start growing and moving, and we see her muscles growing. And for the most part, I think those shots work. I think the ending of this movie has a little bit too much of a suspension of disbelief, to the point where I thought it was kind of in the character's head. But I think when the movie just kind of reveals like, no, that actually happens, I was like, okay, that's a little bit tonally off, and I think a little silly. And I think it just kind of brought me down from saying this is like an all-timer for me, which I still really, really like this movie. But I think that I think if I had one major complaint, I think the last like the climax of the movie really just didn't work for me. But if I were to bring praise onto one other major element of this movie that I really, really loved, the score by Clint Mansell is incredible. Clint Mansell is a composer that has done a lot of work in the past. He's Darren Aronofsky's main composer, so he composed movies like The Wrestler, like Noah, and the score he gives this movie, once again, it just really helps the atmosphere of this like small Western town in the 80s, and really like helps create like the neo-noir elements. I hope we get more directors start hiring Clint Mansell, because he does an excellent job here, and I really, really loved what he did in this movie. And it really just helps create like the small town crime element natures of this movie. Like these are the types of movies I wish we got more of, where it's like they're really cool crime movies. These characters are flawed. They have major issues, but they're just in it together, and they're trying to get and they're trying to deal with even more shitty characters than them. And yeah, I'm all here for it. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I would give it a very, very good 8.5 out of 10 videotapes. Again, there are just a few complaints that did bother me, to the point where I did have to drop the score down a little, but this is still one of the better movies I've seen this year. I think Rose Glass continues to prove that she's one of the more fun independent voices that we have working in movies today. Kristen Stewart once again proves she's one of the best actresses working today. Love Lies Bleeding, a really, really good movie. If you had the time, please, please, please go see it in theaters. These are the types of movies that I really like to champion. These smaller movies with these fun ideas like this. Love Lies Bleeding, really, really good. But yeah, that does bring us to the end of Cinemaster's reviews. This does bring us to the end of this week's episode. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. We're putting out a lot of awesome content if you are a big fan of movies. Next week, we are going to be reviewing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Really, really excited for that. I was a big fan of Ghostbusters Afterlife, so I really hope, even though Jason Reitman is directing this one, bringing back that cast will be able to make another really good movie. But yeah, I'll see you next week. And remember, as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.